J.K. Rowling in a world-first interview.
There are books, and there's Harry Potter. They're the biggest phenomenon in the history of publishing. 200 million copies about a boy who discovers he's a world-famous wizard. They're sold in over 200 countries and translated into over 50 languages. Beyond the books is an industry, films, dolls, games and merchandise, making hundreds of millions of pounds a year.
Well now, Mr. Potter, let me see. He pulled a long tape measure with silver markings out of his pocket. Which is your wand arm? Well, I'm right-handed, said Harry.
All this from an idea which wandered into the mind of the then pretty penniless J.K. Rowling as she sat on a train. She imagined his story as a series of 7 books, each spanning a year at the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry.
Every Ollivander wand has a core of a powerful magical substance, Mr. Potter. We use unicorn hairs, phoenix tail feathers, and the heartstrings of dragons.
The 5th book, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, goes on sale in 28.5 hours. It's confidently expected to have the biggest print run in history. The author of this phenomenon lives in Edinburgh.
So this is it?
This is it, yeah.
Are we allowed to look inside it?
Yes, a bit. Look there. Yeah, so that's it. And
How many pages?
how many pages? 766.
766.
All with writer's block, which I think you'll agree is a bit of an achievement.
You want to read the first sentence? Oh, actually, we know what the first sentence is.
You know what the first sentence is. I could read you a random sentence. No, not that one. That gives way too much away. You can have... Yes, but I think we ought to vote on it properly, said Hermione, unperturbed.
It's a very Hermione sort of
It
thing
is
to
a
say,
very
isn't it?
Hermione sentence, isn't it?
But do you find the whole secrecy issue, the need for secrecy, a bit ridiculous?
No.
Why not?
No, not at all, because but a lot of it comes from me.
Really?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, of course one could be cynical, and I'm sure you would be disposed to be so, and say it was a marketing ploy. But I don't want the kids to know what's coming, because that's part of the excitement of the story. And having, you know, sweated blood to create all my red herrings and lay all my clues, to me it's not a... I was going to say this is my life. It's not my life, but it is a very important part of my life.
Has it come at a price, this success and fame?
The fame thing is interesting, I suppose, because I never wanted to be famous, and I never dreamt I would be famous. So I know, you know, my fantasy of being a famous writer, and again, there's a slight disconnect with reality, which happens a lot with me. I imagined being a famous writer would be like being Jane Austen, being able to sit at home in the parsonage, and your books would be very famous, and occasionally you'd correspond with the Prince of Wales' secretary. You know, I didn't think they'd rake through my bins. I didn't expect to be photographed on the beach through long lenses. I never dreamt it would impact my daughter's life negatively, which at times it has. It would be churlish to say there's nothing good about being famous. To have a total stranger walk up to you as you're walking around Safeways and say, I don't know, a number of nice things that they might say about your work. I mean, of course you walk on with a bit more spring in your step. That's a very, very nice thing to happen. I just wish they wouldn't approach me when I'm buying, you know, items of a questionable nature. Exactly, always, never when you're in the fresh fruit and veg section, never, always.
Do you think success has changed you?
Yes.
In what way?
I don't feel like quite such a waste of space anymore.
You didn't really feel a
I
waste of space.
totally felt a waste of space. I was lousy. Yeah, I did, yeah. And now I feel that it turns out there was one thing I was good at, and I always suspected I could tell a story. And I suppose it's rather sad that I needed confirmation by being published.
But and what about the money? Do you feel... A lot of people, when they suddenly make a lot of money, feel guilty about it.
Oh, yeah.
You feel guilt?
Yeah. Yeah, I do feel guilty, definitely I feel guilty.
Why?
When it first happened, of course I didn't immediately become very rich. The biggest jump for me was the American advance, which was enough for me to buy a house, not outright, but, you know, we'd been renting until then. And I didn't feel guilty, I felt scared at that point, because I thought, I mustn't blow this, I've got some money, I mustn't do anything stupid with it. And then, yeah, I felt guilty, yeah, I did. I mean, at least I could see cause and effect. I knew I had worked quite hard for quite a long time. Of course, the rewards were completely disproportionate, but I could see how I'd got there. So that was easy, it made it easier to rationalise. Muggles have garden gnomes too, you know, Harry told Ron as they crossed the lawn. Yeah, I've seen those things they think are gnomes, said Ron, bent double with his head in a peony bush, like fat little Father Christmases with fishing rods. There was a violent scuffling noise, the peony bush shuddered, and Ron straightened up. This is a gnome, he said grimly. Get off me! Get off me! Squealed the gnome.
Let's talk a little bit about the next book. Harry and Ron and Hermione are all going to be older.
Yeah.
How are they going to change?
Quite a lot, because I find it quite sinister the way that, looking back at the famous 5 books, for example, in I think 21 adventures they had, or 22 or something, they never had a hormonal impulse, except that Anne was sometimes told that she would make someone a good little wife whenever she unlaid the picnic things.
But that's the usual pattern of children's
Yeah.
books, isn't it? Swallows and Amazons is the same, isn't it? The children never age, but you
And it
you're
reaches
just-
its apotheosis in Peter Pan, obviously, where
Yeah.
it's quite explicit. And I find that very sinister. I had a very forthright letter from a woman who had heard me say that Harry was going to have his first date or something. And she said, please don't do that, that's awful. I want these books to be a world where my children can escape to, and free, she literally said, free from hurt and fear. And I'm thinking, have you read the books? What are you talking about, free from hurt and fear? Harry goes through absolute hell every time he returns to school. So I think, you know, a bit of snogging would alleviate matters a bit.
So there will be some pairing up, will there, in this
Well,
book?
in the fullness of time.
Unlikely pairings? Not Hermione and Draco Malfoy or anything like that.
I don't really want to say, because it will ruin all the fan sites. They have such fun with their theories. And it is fun. And some of them even get quite close. No one's ever, I have gone and looked at some of it, and no one's ever, there is one thing that if anyone guessed, I would be really annoyed, because it's kind of the heart of it all. And it kind of explains everything, and no one's quite got there, but a couple of people have skirted it. So, you know, I'd be pretty miffed after 13, 14 years of writing the books if someone just came along and said, I think this will happen in book 7. Because it's too late, I couldn't divert now. I mean, everything's been building up to it, and I've laid all my clues.
Is Harry going to become a bolshy teenager?
He's a lot angrier in this book. He really is quite angry a lot of the time, and I think justifiably so. Look at what he's gone through. It's about time he started feeling a little bit miffed at the hand life has dealt him.
And when you look at a lot of that marketing stuff, that merchandise, when you look at things like, you know, the Harry Potter ice pumpkin slushy maker and all that junk.
Yeah. Is that a real thing, or have you made that up?
I'm serious. There's a list of about 50 of these things. Harry Potter embroidered polo shirts, the late night ride towel, Harry Potter and Ron Weasley alarm clock. I mean, it goes on and on.
Oh, I knew about the alarm clock. There's some of it. How do I feel about it? Honestly, I think it's pretty well known. If I could have stopped all merchandising, I would have done. And twice a year, I sit down with Warner Brothers, and we have conversations about merchandising, and I can only say you should have seen some of the stuff that was stopped. Moaning Myrtle, lavatory seat alarms, and worse.
Oh, that sounded rather fun.
I knew you were going to say, it's not fun, it was horrible, it was a horrible thing.
You could have said, no, I'm not going to have any merchandising.
I don't think I could at the time. Not at the time. This was in I'm so bad on dates. Must have been about 98, 99. I started talking to Warner Brothers. And at that point, I just didn't have the power to stop them. You know, that is the nature of the film world, because they're very expensive films to make. And if they keep making them, which is obviously not guaranteed, but if they do keep making them, they're going to get really even more expensive. I mean, I shudder to think what they're going to say when they say, see book 5, because I think they're starting to feel that I'm writing stuff just to see if they can do it, which of course I'm not, but, you know, I know that there are headaches about the scale of the world that I'm writing.
But do you never worry that perhaps your legacy will be not this entire world that you created, but lots of bits of plastic?
Do I worry? But honestly,
yeah,
completely honestly, no. I don't worry about it. I think the books will always be more important than the bits of plastic, and I really, really believe that. And maybe that sounds arrogant, but that's how I feel.
Do you even know, when it gets to the level that you're at, do you even know what you're earning? Do you know what you earned last year?
No. No.
Well, it's tens of millions, I guess.
I did ask I met my accountant recently, and I said, they say in the rich list I'm richer than the Queen. I said, so that means you've embezzled quite a lot of money, because I mean, I do know ballpark what I've got. I mean, I'm not that clueless, and I certainly have not got 280 million.
What is it roughly?
Would I tell you?
I don't know, you can't blame me for asking.
No, I don't blame you for asking. Harry retreated to the sofa. Uncle Vernon, however, moved forwards. Wait a moment, he bellowed at the fire. What exactly are you going to... Bang! The electric fire shot across the room as the boarded-up fireplace burst outwards, expelling Mr. Weasley, Fred, George and Ron in a cloud of rubble and loose chippings.
You mentioned that previous books, you finished one and immediately started the next one. Have you started the 6th one?
Yeah.
How far are you into it?
Not that far, because I had a baby. But I started it when I was still pregnant with David. And I actually did get some writing done the other day, and that's not bad going, because he's only 10 weeks. So he's pretty full-time at the moment, but yeah, I did a bit more the other day.
Are we going to discover in book 5 why, for example, Voldemort has such an animus against Harry's parents?
Yes.
Can you give us a clue as to...
No. It's not long now, come on. Yes, you do find that out in book 5.
What else are you willing to tell us about what's in book 5?
Obviously, new Defence Against the Dark Arts teacher.
Is that going to be a woman?
Yes. And it's not Fleur, which everyone on the internet speculates about, and it's not... Who was the other one they keep asking about? Mrs. Figg. It's not Mrs. Figg. I've read both of those.
Are we going to discover anything more about Snape and...
Yes. Yeah.
And Harry's mother? Did he have a crush on Harry's mother, unrequited love, anything like that?
Hence his animosity to Harry?
Yes.
You speculate?
I speculate, yes. I'm just asking you whether you can tell us.
No, I can't tell you. But you do find out more about Snape. And, yeah, quite a lot more about him, actually.
And is there going to be a death in this book?
Yeah, horrible.
A horrible death of a significant figure?
Yeah. I went into the kitchen having done it.
What, kill this person?
Yeah, well, I'd rewritten the death. And rewritten it, and that was it. It was definitive, and the person was definitely dead. And I walked into the kitchen crying. And Neil said to me, "What on earth is wrong?" And I said, "Well, I've just killed the person." Neil doesn't know who the person is, but I said, "I've just killed the person." And he said, "Well, don't do it then." I thought, doctor, you know. And I said, well, it just doesn't work like that. You writing children's books, you need to be a ruthless killer.
Was it going to upset people?
Yes, upset me. But I always knew it was coming, but I managed to live in denial and carry on with the character and not think about it.
So you know what is going to become of really all the major characters over the span of the series?
Yeah, yeah.
Why stop when they grow up? It might be interesting to know what becomes of Harry as an adult.
How do you know he'll still be alive?
Oh. Well, the end of book 7.
Would be one way to kill off the merchandising.
That really would be killing the golden goose, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, I'm supposed to be Richard and the Queen, what do I care? I'm happier now, I would say, than I've ever been in my life. Right now, yeah, definitely.
But that's not just because of writing, of course.
No. But it does have a lot to do with that because I needed to take off the time between books 4 and 5. And I really feel as though I got to grips with a lot of things. I sort of put my head up and got a big lungful of air, and I looked around and I saw what had happened, and I allowed myself time to deal with it a bit better. I think if you'd interviewed me 4 years ago, I don't think I would have been nearly as relaxed.
There's an element a way in which you've become sort of public property.
Yeah.
That you belong because of what you created, that people feel you belong to them.
Yes, that's definitely true. I think we get 1,000 letters a week to this office. Come and open my fate, write a personal letter to my daughter, come to my son's birthday party. You know what I mean? And in some ways that's very touching, that they think that I have the time.
Well, if you don't ask, you don't get.
Exactly.
You can't blame them for
And
trying.
I don't blame them for trying. I absolutely don't. Except for the woman who wrote to me and said, would I please make her and her husband an annual payment because they hadn't been to the theatre in 3 years. And as begging letters go, that wasn't a great angle.
But yeah, I mean, as begging letters go, you must get loads. I mean,
Yeah.
do you give a lot of money away?
Well, that's... I give money away, that's what I'm going to say. This must not be seen too closely. This is the plan for Order of the Phoenix. So I have these grid things for every book. Well, I have about 12 grid things for every book, but it's just a way of reminding myself what has to happen in each chapter to advance us in the plot. And then you have all your subplots. So it's just a way of keeping track of what's going on, really.
And these scraps of paper, which you've filed elegantly in a carrier bag,
Yeah.
they're plot ideas or...
Well, some of them are totally redundant now because it's been written, and I keep it out of sentimentality's sake, I suppose. But some of it that has backstory, and like this. This is in here is the history of the Death Eaters, and I don't know that I'll ever actually. It's in the front. I'll ever actually need it, but at some point, which were once called something different, they were called the Knights of Walpurgis. Well, I don't know if I'll need it, but I like knowing it. So, you know, I like to keep that sort of stuff on hand.
What's your preferred way of working? I mean, lots of people sit down and say, I must churn out 600 words or 1,000 words a day. But do you work like that? How do you do it?
Well, that's like painting a fence, isn't it? I've just got to
Well,
get
I mean,
to that.
some quite distinguished writers have written
That's how
like
you
that.
do it, isn't it?
No, distinguished writers, I say.
No one would write like that.
I mean, Somerset Maugham used to write 600 words a day, and he'd stop
Yeah.
more or less whether he was mid-sentence.
No, I couldn't do it like that.
So what do? You sit down and you just keep going until you're too exhausted to continue, and then...
Yeah, pretty much, actually. It's the flogged horse school of writing. Yeah. Well, the thing about the 600 words, I mean, some days you can do a very, very, very hard day's work and not write a word, just revising, or you would scribble a few words.
And we know that you've written the ending.
I've written the final chapter of book 7.
Book 7.
Yeah.
So you know where you're going to get to. Do you know how you're going to get there?
Yes. Yes, but I mean, I I allow a margin. I mean, it would be so boring if I really knew, you know, it would be joining the dots, wouldn't it? It's not that well worked out, but it's fairly well plotted. I mean, it would be worrying if it weren't at this stage, wouldn't it? If I slid off the end of book 5 and thought, right, what shall I write about in book 6? You know, it's a complicated story, so I need to know what I'm doing.
Do you ever wish you hadn't started on it?
Yes, but not for the reasons you might expect. Sometimes, yeah. I've had very low moments and I've thought, what the hell did I do this for? But very rare. Very rare.
Why do you think that occasionally?
I haven't thought it for a long time now, but it was while I was writing book 4. I went through a very bad patch. The funny thing is that the press were writing I had writer's block on with Phoenix.
That's the next one.
Yeah, the one that's about to come out. And there was speculation that I was finding the pressure. Well, it was funny because literally on consecutive days you'd have either I was feeling the pressure too much and I was cracking up, or I was too happy being married. And that was stopping me writing, and you kind of couldn't have both. But in fact, the book and Order of Phoenix never gave me any trouble. It was quite a docile book to write, and then a lot of fun to write. Chamber of Secrets, I really did have writer's block. Briefly, I think. It wasn't a very serious case. It was only about 5 weeks. And compared to some people, you know, what's 5 weeks? Goblet of Fire, I was very unhappy towards the end of writing Goblet. And at the point where I realised I was fantasising that I would break an arm and therefore not be able to... I really mean this. I mean, I was just a little way away from actually thinking, right, how can I break my arm? So I can tell my publishers that I can't physically do it, and then that will give me more time. Because I committed to a totally unrealistic deadline. And I made the deadline, but I really did make it by working round the clock, really, in some ways. And I was so unhappy. An intense cold swept over them all. Harry felt his own breath catch in his chest. The cold went deeper than his skin. It was inside his chest. It was inside his very heart. Harry's eyes rolled up into his head. He couldn't see. He was drowning in cold. There was a rushing in his ears as though of water. He was being dragged downwards, the roaring growing louder.
So you didn't have writer's block. The reason this book has been, what, 3 years? It's 3 years since the last one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why has it taken so long?
Well, it hasn't. Well, it hasn't. The book didn't take that long. I decided... What happened was, so Goblet of Fire, I was really in quite a state by the time that book was finished. And I mean, at that point, I really did feel... A lot of things came together with Goblet of Fire. I mean, the press attention had reached a hitherto unknown level, and I couldn't work outside the house anymore. And just a hell of a lot of stuff was going on, you know. It was the fame thing. Do I still feel like that? No. But that's because I took the time off. And I was still writing during those 3 years, because I never stopped writing. But I didn't want to be published again. That was a big difference. So when I finished Goblet of Fire, I said to... There were only 2 publishers that bought the next book. And I said to both of them, I want to repay my advance. And both of them, you could almost hear them having cardiac arrest on the end of the phone. And why do you want to repay your advance? And I said, because I don't want to publish next year. I want to write this book in a more leisurely way. And I want to take some time off. Because I finished Philosopher's Stone. I literally started Chamber of Secrets that afternoon. I finished Chamber of Secrets, I started Prisoner of Azkaban the next day, and I finished Azkaban and I'd already started Goblet of Fire, because they overlapped. So there was absolutely no let-up. And I knew I couldn't do it. I just knew I couldn't do it. My brain was going to short-circuit if I tried to do that again. So they said, well, how about if we do still get the book when you finish it, but we don't have a deadline? So I said, okay. So that's how we worked it. So there was no deadline. So... Just once and for all, and for the record, I didn't miss the deadline, because there was no deadline.
And you didn't have writer's block on that book?
No, I've just produced 250,000 words. It's quite hard to do with writer's
I mean, that's
block.
longer than the New Testament, you know.
Oh, God, stop it, with all these new facts that I didn't know. Is it?
Yeah. By about 70,000 words or something.
Do you know the Christian fundamentalists will find a way to turn that into a reason to hate me as well? She's more verbose than God.
Has book 5, that's thing that's the size of a house brick.
Yes.
It was originally much longer than that, was it?
No, actually it wasn't. It's about the size no, that's not even true. Originally I thought it would be slightly shorter than Goblet of Fire. And what is the phrase? The tale grew in the telling. It did. The thing is, I've got so much now, so much backstory to tell. But I really mean it this time. 6 will not need to be that long. It won't need to be that long. I had to move them around a lot in there. There's a lot of toing and froing in there.
Are you going to have a lot of loose ends to tie up in 7?
Oh God, I hope not. No, I'm aiming to tie it all off neatly in a nice big knot. That's it. Good night. It's over.
So that may not be particularly long either.
No, I think that will be long. Because I won't want to let go. So I'll just keep writing. Probably just start a completely new plot in book 7 just to it's going to be very difficult to leave it. I mean, I do look forward to a post-Harry era in my life, because some of the, things that go along with this are not that much fun. But at the same time, I dread leaving Harry, because I've been working on it over what I sincerely hope will prove to have been the most turbulent part of my life, and that was the constant, and I worked on it so hard for so long, and then it will be over, and I think it's going to leave a massive gap.
Do you know what you'll go on to next after that?
Well, while I was in between, during the 3 years that I've just had, I was writing something else for a while, which was really great. It was good, and I might go back to that. I don't know.
Is that an adult novel? Or?
It's just something completely different, just for me. It was very liberating to do it.
It'd be quite difficult for you, though.
It will be.
You'd have to publish
I
under
think,
a pseudonym,
exactly,
wouldn't
but they'll find out within seconds. I don't underestimate the investigative powers of the press, but I don't know what I'll do. I mean, I know I will definitely still be writing. Will I publish? I don't know. But it's what you said. Of course, you write to be published because you write to share the story. But I do think back to what happened to A.A. Milne, who of course tried to write adult novels and was never reviewed without mention of Tigger, Pooh and Piglet. And I would imagine that the same will happen with me. And that's fine. I mean, God knows my shoulders are broad enough, I could cope with that. But I would like some time to have some normal life at the end of the series, and probably the best way to get that isn't to publish immediately.
It's not a bad thing to go to your grave with, having invented this
God,
entire
no.
world and made children want to read.
No, not at all. I mean, of course, I'm immensely proud of Harry, and I'm never going to disown it, and I promise I'm never, ever, ever going to apologise for it. Never. Because I'm proud of it. And I will defend Harry against all comers.
J.K. Rowling, thank you.
Thank you. Harry took the wand. He felt a sudden warmth in his fingers. He raised the wand above his head, brought it swishing down through the dusty air, and a stream of red and gold sparks shot from the end like a firework, throwing dancing spots of light onto the walls. Hagrid whooped and clapped, and Mr. Ollivanders cried, "Oh, bravo! Yes, indeed, oh, very good! Well, well, well. How curious."
Tonight on BBC4, a new series